I grew up in Detroit. My parents were 21 when they had me, and dirt poor. We lived with my grandparents in a two-story house. My parents and I took the upstairs, while my grandparents lived downstairs. Besides my grandfather screaming at my grandmother, and my parents occasionally bickering, life in that house was pretty good as far as I can remember. Being the minority white kid in a predominantly black neighborhood, however, was more difficult. We, and especially I, didn't have a lot of friends. Every so often, I'd hear a brick slam against the side of our house and stick my head out the window to find a kid running like a bat out of hell toward a house on the other side of the street. A few times those bricks found windows and shattered them. My dad always got pissed off when this happened. My dad was that kind of guy. He'd beat your ass if he even thought you were disrespecting him. He was old-fashioned that way. My mom, however, was a pacifist. She made him promise not to do anything about it personally, except to call the police, which, as any of you who grew up in or around Detroit know, was useless. In other words, she wanted him to take it, and that was a hard pill for my dad to swallow. The year I turned 6, my brother was born. Later that year, the night before Christmas, my dad took him to the store because he kept crying and my mom had a headache and wanted them out of the house for a while. It was dark when they left. Mom went downstairs to talk with my grandmother, her mom, and I stayed upstairs. I was supposed to be asleep, but you know how that goes when you're 6 and full of energy. When I couldn't sleep, I used to listen to the house settle. When night fell and everybody in the house were sat in their chairs, the house popped and crackled as it settled into the earth. I always felt the hairs stand up on the back of my neck listening to the staircase next to my room squeak as if somebody were creeping up it. A half hour passed before I saw headlights travel up the driveway, which was right outside my window. Their hard yellow beams cut through the night like moon glow. Dad was home. I stood up and rubbed my eyes, for I was half asleep by now, and padded over to the kitchen. In our kitchen we had a window overlooking the backyard where the garage was. I went to that window and peered out, waiting for my dad's Crown Victoria to come into view. The vehicle trundled lazily up the drive, and when it finally made it into the backyard, it wasn't Dad's Crown Victoria at all, but a black Cadillac. It parked, its lights extinguished. I leaned closer to the window so that my nose touched the glass to get a better view. In unison, all 4 car doors popped open, and out poured 10 men dressed in all black. Some wore ski masks. All of them carried either blunt weapons or guns. One man, the passenger, cradled a shotgun in his arms. Another man, who was sitting in the back by the looks of it, popped open the trunk and helped yet another guy out who also carried a gun. My stomach dropped. I knew that what was happening wasn't supposed to happen, that it wasn't good, but I couldn't stop watching long enough to run downstairs and warn my mom about it. 2 of the men approached the house. They came all the way up to the windows on the bottom floor and peered through cracks in the curtains. After a flurry of hand gestures, one of the men knelt in front of the door and started jimmying the lock. He had the door open in less than a minute. The 2 men said something to the other 9 surrounding the car, then stepped inside. Like before, I heard the house creak, but this time I knew the man coming up the stairs was real. The 2 men spoke to each other. "I'll check upstairs," the first said in a deep voice. "All right, I've got downstairs," the other said. The first man took the stairs leading directly to me, 2 at a time. I dashed out of the kitchen and into my bedroom, and doing the only thing my scared 6-year-old brain could think of, I squeezed under the bed and held my breath. A shot went off downstairs. I flinched. Heavy bootsteps left the kitchen and entered the hallway. I remember that he walked with a limp, made a sort of thump-drag sound with his feet. He racked his shotgun. A shell clinked against the hardwood floor. It was too dark in the house to see, but I heard his breathing. The deep, rhythmic breathing of a man on a mission. Between every breath was another step. Together they produced a sort of eerie music that sent electricity down my spine. He went directly into my room, crossing the threshold with the speed and precision of a soldier clearing a room. He lifted his weapon, took aim at my bed, and fired a shot. I closed my mouth instinctually, clapping my hand tight against it as tears flooded my vision. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled my nostrils. My eyes found the smoking shell on the floor. Around it, dust and stuffing from the bed fell like snow. The man grabbed my blanket and ripped back the covers. He sighed. All through this, my mind was focused on one thing. Dad was going to be home soon with my baby brother. If he came up the driveway while those men hung around outside, he and my brother were dead. "I know you're in here," the man breathed. By now, the adrenaline in my blood subsided, and I felt the wound in my leg. One of the shotgun's pellets had pierced the bed and buried itself in my calf. I wanted to scream, but kept gripping my mouth, jaw clenched. The man set his shotgun down on the floor and grabbed the edge of the bed. He started to lift, and a siren. Distant but closing fast. The man let go of my bed and dropped to his knees, scrambling to grab his shotgun. That's when we locked eyes. We were 2 feet apart. I swear to God, I looked at him and he looked at me, and in that second of communication, he told me all I would ever need to know about his intentions that night. Those bloodshot eyes said 2 things. I knew it, and I really was going to kill you. And when I get away from the cops, maybe I'll come back to finish the job. Then he smiled an empty smile with mossy teeth and stood up and jogged out of my room into the kitchen and back down the stairs. My heart slammed against my chest, but I scrambled out from under the bed in spite of it. I limped to the window as fast as I could manage and looked in the backyard, where the men were packing into the Cadillac like it was a clown car. My guy, the one with the shotgun, entered last. The car's engine roared to life and they backed out of the driveway. Within seconds, they were gone. 10 seconds later, police cars zipped by, their sirens continuing their drone behind them. Mom ran upstairs. She had tears in her eyes and wore blood spatter over her t-shirt. She grabbed me and pulled me into her. We started crying. "Are you okay?" she asked, eyes ratcheted to the wound on my leg that bled through my pants. "Yeah," I said, unsure exactly what being okay in such a situation should feel like. I felt trapped between confusion and nausea. "How's Grandma and Grandpa?" "Grandma's fine," she said, and began sobbing. Heavy, choking sobs, disgusting sobs. Her knuckles were white against me. Dad came home with my brother only a minute later. A minute. I think that's the scariest part of this whole thing. 1 minute later, and both he and my little brother might have caught bullets in their brains. Almost certainly would have, because my dad would have fought. I know it. That's just the kind of guy he was. This was hands down the scariest moment of my life. And since then, I haven't been able to look out the window at night. And when people come up the driveway only to back out because they made a wrong turn, I cannot help but see the man with the bloodshot eyes kneeling in front of my bed, promising, without a word, that he would come back. But I haven't seen him yet.